It's the biggest talk around an Oscar since the Will Smith slap.
Oh, wow.
And West Coast has a big decision to make. Do they put their co-captain in cotton wool if and when he returns from injury? If he requests a trade to Brisbane or Hawthorn at the end of the season, do they need to protect their asset with band one compensation in the form of an early draft pick likely headed their way? Or do they simply pick their best team when available and hope that Oscar stays in the West? As the Eagles take a by-enforced break, the Dockers have their own head-turner to ponder. Does dual Brownlow medalist Nat Fyfe remain a super sub? Is he in their best 22? Or is Fyfe worth more as a third or fourth quarter game breaker when he can impact with his big body and high footy IQ? A win off the bye, albeit just against an impressive North Melbourne, has set the Dockers up for a tilt at September action. They are coming off a 5-day break, so have to get it right at the selection table. Welcome to the West Sports Show. We are brought to you by TabTouch. Got the touch? Download the TabTouch app today. What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. I am joined on a Tuesday, as always, by Craig O'Donoghue. Cod, how you going?
Wonderful, Quarters. How are you?
I'm good. So a couple of interesting results at the weekend. West Coast shot themselves in the foot in the first quarter. Game over. Played pretty well thereafter. And Freo won coming off the bye, but just got it done. So remains to be seen whether they've got that right just yet. A couple of topics coming out of the weekend. Let's start with West Coast and Oscar Allen. So regardless of his injury, we're still waiting on an update on his injury and the severity of it. Do you put him in cotton wool given what may happen at the end of the season?
I'm saying yes, you put him in cotton wool if he's going to play less than 4 games for the rest of the year. So it depends on when we get this update through, and it may be through by the time people listen to this, but as of time of recording, which is 2:06 and 8 seconds, then there is no update right now. But if they were to say this plantaris injury means he's only going to miss a fortnight, well, that's vastly different if he's going to miss 6 weeks or 8 weeks or anything like that. So I think it's dependent on can you get back with and get to play 4 more games. I reckon that's the benchmark for what would be needed. Because if he's only going to play 3, you got to get him fit again. What if he breaks down after that? The value to the club from a trade perspective or from his pre-season perspective, if he stays, they want to be able to train. If he leaves, they want as much as they can for him. So it'll be a difficult balance. So you got to make sure that you can get a decent chunk under him if he's going to play.
So given the size of the contract that's likely to be offered, if he does say to the Eagles at the end of the year, and he hasn't yet, okay, I want to be traded to Brisbane, for example. So they're offering a 6-year deal. So it's a band 1 compensation. So just say they remain on the bottom of the ladder. So that's pick 2, okay? So there's plenty to be gained.
Massive.
By resting. My theory is I'm a bit against that. I think you play your best team when available. I'm going to go about 2 weeks. I reckon if you can play 3 or 4, I'd have him in the team. I just think the value to the young forwards in that team, it's too much. It's too great. But anything less, I'm saying about 2 weeks, forget it, towards the end of the season. I just reckon you always pick them if they're there and available.
The problem that they'll have is that they don't know what he's doing yet. And I think they need to have the actual conversation with him. What are you thinking? Tell us. We won't tell the world. We don't have to tell everyone. But they need to know what he's thinking.
You don't reckon they've had that conversation yet?
I don't reckon they would have had it yet. This is a good time to have it around the bye. This is when most things are done. Right? They need to have a pretty strong leaning about what he's thinking. And if he wants to say, look, I still don't know, that's my honest opinion, then that's one thing. They need to know, are they preparing him to be shipped off to another club or are they preparing him for a pre-season? And then you can have a genuine desire to know what you're wanting to do and how many games you're wanting him to play because you know what you're planning for.
Yeah. It was an interesting old game. I think at quarter time you and I walked past each other and we thought, this is going to be horrendous. It's Carlton, what were they? 39 points in front at quarter time.
Yeah.
But
10 to 24 inside 50s.
Yeah.
So plus 14 to Carlton inside 50s. It was 33 contested possessions to 53 and 34 uncontested possessions to 67. And it genuinely looked like there were 3 more Carlton players on the field sometimes.
It did. And at the risk of sounding simplistic, they just didn't turn up in the first quarter. Hence, Andrew McWalter's first genuine spray publicly of that squad.
Did you like that? Did you like him saying pathetic?
Loved it.
Yeah.
Loved it and wrote about it in my analysis. I thought, tell it as it is. You can't sugarcoat everything. It was pathetic in the first quarter. He got it 100% right. Thereafter, there were some really good signs. I mean, we talk about Tom McCarthy's debut. What a wonderful debut. Just looked the part, didn't he? He looks like a beautifully balanced footballer. A lot of his 31 possessions were kickouts.
10 of them,
but they've given him the responsibility of kickouts in his first game, which in itself shows you how much they value him already. He's only been there a couple of weeks. And he was going at 94% efficiency too. So I thought that was a real plus for them. I thought Tyrell Dewar, who's been named as the rising star for this week, was terrific. I thought it was probably Harley's best game of the year. Do you agree with that?
Either that or equal best. He gave away free kicks again, which detracted from it a bit because they were the undisciplined sort of free kicks still. So
what do you do though? Because they get in India. It's human nature to fight back, and that's his makeup.
He's given away 40. That's a lot. 40 is a lot of free kicks. I think he gave away 47 for the whole season last year. He's up to 40 right now. But yeah, so I love the fact that he's building into his season now after what we saw at the start of the year. But the highlight, McCarthy was the highlight of the game for West Coast fans, and it just was a reminder that if you can get into the AFL system as a mature age footballer, you have an advantage. You have a clear advantage.
That was not an 18-year-old out there. That was someone who'd been around the system for a while and had a much more mature head on his shoulders.
And trusted what he knew he could do and played like he knew he could play. Whereas I think a lot of the time if you're a kid coming in and you're a midfielder, as an example, and you're not going to push the superstar midfielders out of the centre square, so you have to go and play across half-back or in the back pocket, or in the forward pocket or something like that, and you're learning a new role. Well, McCarthy's been playing with AFL footballers at Richmond against AFL footballers on a halfback flank, and that's where he played. And he was just perfect. And I loved talking to his dad in the rooms after the game, and his dad was really honest. He's like, I'm an academic, he said. My partner is more sporty, but I was looking at it going, you're getting on. You're not in pathway programs. You're not playing for Vic Metro. You're not playing in these elite competitions. You're playing suburban footy, and you reckon you're going to be an AFL player? Time to start looking for a career. And Tom was like, no, I want to keep chasing my AFL dream. I'm going to do what I have to do to get there. And now he's got there, and he looks like he's going to be here for a while.
He does. And I liked his first presser when I think he'd been 24 hours in town never been to WA before. I liked his first presser. It was a lot of confidence, but it wasn't false bravado. It was, no. I'm very confident that they give me the opportunity ASAP at AFL level. I won't let them down. I just loved it. So, and he proved himself right, didn't he? We also want to single out Liam Baker and Jack Graham for the seasons they've had. I think we've sort of tend to gloss over them a bit because there's the expectation, given their experience and talent, that they're just going to get the job done. But it's not easy coming over. And there's a bit of hype around you, and it's a very young squad, and you're copping a lot of floggings. So I think they've been really good. And the other one I wanted to single out was Ruben Jinby. I thought started on Curnow, had to play tall and small at the weekend, but I think he's had a really good 3-4 weeks, Jinby.
Yeah, he's standing up in the back line. There's no doubt about that, and he's a massive, massive human. So he can play in different roles. The one thing with West Coast is it's too easy for them to say, we played well for 3 quarters. They're having too many quarters where they're just not competitive at all.
I thought that was a one. They haven't had a quarter like that for a while.
The Geelong game, the last quarter of the Geelong game, that they totally lost their way as well. So it's okay to lose the quarter by a couple of goals here and there. If it's two goals every quarter, then it's an 8-goal game. Yeah. That's different to being down by 39 points and losing a quarter by 4 to 5 goals. And those 4 to 5 goal quarter losses, they need to reduce them totally and fight their way back and not just allow a team to, just to get totally on top. And I spoke to Liam Duggan in the rooms after the game, and he said that's one thing that they really have to focus on, that it can't be, let's just get through to the break and then we'll reset and Minnie will tell us what to do. He said, as leaders, we have to be better at fixing the problem out in the field. And he said it's not easy when your leadership group also involves Liam Baker and Jack Graham, who are still getting to know their teammates as well. He said, and now Oscar's hurt and Jake Waterman's hurt and Jeremy McGovern's hurt. So they don't have a lot of genuine leaders out there who can get the message through that, okay, now we're going to shift to this mode to fix this up. You go over there and
Liam Baker's one, Jack Graham's one. Yeah, and there are a few here and then. Liam Duggan's one.
Yeah, and Duggan's point was that the challenge for Baker and Graham is that they haven't been at the club for long enough to know their teammates as intimately as they would like to. So they're still learning a bit about them still, and it can take a full season for that to happen. So,
who to roast, who to put your arms around, because the responses are very different.
And who can do certain elements. I remember, if Doug, you go, I remember 2 years ago, this bloke played on this guy and he did this. So I can offer that advice about going back and doing that, whereas Baker and Graham haven't seen that from their teammates. So, but they do need to reduce those horror quarters. That's the next step. They've got rid of the 100-point floggings, but those quarters which led to the 100-point floggings, they've also got to get rid of.
Here and there, yeah. So we'll get to the buy in a moment because you've got an interesting theory on it. But first, as a proud major sponsor of the Fremantle Football Club, Woodside has accepted the challenge of supporting local footy at all levels, from grassroots to greatness, so it can thrive throughout WA. Woodside, Australia's leading energy company. Cod, the Dockers got it done. But there were a few heart murmurs in that last quarter.
Yes, there absolutely were. They would have been extremely nervous that they were going to drop that game, and thank goodness for Josh Tracy taking an unbelievable mark.
He did roost it out in the full after that.
But he'd wasted enough time to help them at that point. The concern for Fremantle all year has been that when they've played really good teams and everyone's gone, they're underdogs here, they've gone and played well.
Yeah.
When they've played teams that everyone goes, they'll win this one, they haven't necessarily played their best. And they weren't at their best over the weekend. They haven't been their best in recent years off of buys, and they need to show against Essendon on Thursday night that they can just belt the hell out of them, because this is such a young Essendon team.
Coming off, a 96-point loss?
And with young players, there's just so many players in that team who are still finding their way, that they need to dominate this game, because they haven't been able to dominate against the younger, inexperienced teams so far. So that's something that they definitely have to work on. But in terms of what I did like about it was they got out of jail in terms of it was really close late, and what they did was the right things the entire way through, whereas in the close games in the past, they've lost those ones by making a crucial mistake. There were no mistakes when it mattered.
So a couple of years ago, we were talking, we've mentioned the bye, so they'd lost their last three coming off the bye. They won at the weekend. Haven't been so good in the wet, so it was pretty wet at the weekend. So they've
3 in a row for the wet now.
3 in a row for the wet now. So Gold Coast and
Port
Adelaide. There were some metrics that were a little concerning. I asked Justin Longmuir about it. I was at training this morning. One of them was, I think, 12 fewer inside 50s, and I think it was 29-7 tackles inside 50, which sort of is a bit explained by the disparity in inside 50s. But
the ball's not there, you can't tackle that.
No, that's right. But nevertheless, I think that is a concern. So that's something they addressed. Didn't want to make it a big narrative, but he just didn't think they played that well between the arcs, and he had a very good point there. So
their pressure inside 50 against Adelaide earlier on in the year was frenetic. Their first quarter against Gold Coast, the inside 50 tackling was unbelievable, so they can do it. It was, as I said, it was an example. The Adelaide and the Gold Coast games was where the pressure was on and the expectation was high on, can you live up to playing against a decent team? Well, once again, against the lower team, it was where it fell away. So that's where we need to see that this week against the Bombers.
And they've got some big decisions to make off a 5-day break. One of them, I think, is the ruck pairing. So Darcy and Jackson, 5-day break against a debutant, Vicentini. There's very few Essendon players over 190 centimetres available. So the Goldstein will be rested for the interstate trip. Of course, there's no their first choice ruckmen are injured and unavailable. So they've got some decisions to make. And Nat Fyfe may be one of those decisions as well. Super sub for the second game in a row and did a really good job. Probably could have worked a bit harder just on 3-quarter time with that roost that was a goal. But I thought last quarter was very, very good. He gave them something. A bit of a chase down tackle, helped a bit by a fumbled bounce, but nevertheless, I think he showed a bit. So this morning again, I asked the coach about it, and he said, look, it's interesting, isn't it? And with a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, said maybe we'll keep him as the super sub so he can play till he's 45. But on a serious note, he said, look, players who've been a sub 3 or 4 times, generally speaking, he's probably got one more in him, then we've got to get some game time into him. Now, whether that's at a lower level or whether that's at the AFL level, but he's going to need a full game, I think, at some stage.
Yeah, I'd play him a full game this week because everyone else has had the 5-day break and played a full game, so I think that's where he can play a full game.
Do you think he'll come in for the full game for Freo this week?
Yeah, for Freo this week. I'd give him the full game this week. Yep. But in general, I'd change the terminology around Nat Fyfe. I'd turn him into the closer, not the super sub, not the guy who needs to play less game time because he's old. The closer, the guy who can come on and have an impact because of his experience, his knowledge, his big body, and his ability to win the ball. And I did some research, and we've often thought that the sub has to be the young guy. But the young guy can't come on and have an immediate impact because he's still finding his way. Whereas there have been 9 times this year where a 200-gamer has been the sub, so he's played and has played less than 30% game time, so hasn't come on early because of an injury. So 9 times a 200-gamer has played 30% game time in a match that has been decided by less than 2 goals. That team has won 7 of the 9. So you bring on guys Brodie Smith, Will Hoskin-Elliott, Dylan Shield, Nat Fyfe, David Swallow, Luke Bruce. They're the guys who have done it.
Luke Bruce, I was going to say, last year particularly, would have done that 5-6 times.
Yeah, and they can come into the game straight away. A lot of them have done it multiple times. In those close games, they know what to do. They make the team instantly better as opposed to taking someone off and bringing a young kid on who makes the team instantly worse. And I think if we change the narrative around it, baseball has the closer, cricket has the death bowler, or the Glenn Maxwell type who comes on late to hit the team out of trouble and stuff. If you sell the message that you are the match winner, you are the key to victory, we're saving you for that big moment, as opposed to we need you to be the sub, I think it will change the way players think about it. And you can then say, Nat Fyfe, we need you at your best when everyone else is getting a little bit tired and can't win that hard ball. You will be there and you will be our match winner. I'd love to see that be the way they sell it to the league and to him, and then imagine the build-ups. Here he comes. When's that going to come on? When Collingwood used to come back from 4 goals down, there was an inevitability that it was going to happen. You can build that narrative, I reckon.
Love the idea, of course, it all changes if there's an injury in the first minute.
Yes, and that totally changes.
And that's the concern.
You can plan for it, though.
Yeah, I think it was the concern weeks 1 and 2 with Nat, but now I think he's proven that he could probably get a full game out of it.
He could be FIFO. He could do 2 weeks on, 1 week off. That's his swing. So 2 weeks of sub, then you play. 2 weeks of sub, then you play a full game, so that he's constantly getting it in. But I think the ability to get a genuine impact from your sub, who you know will get you 7 to 10 possessions like he has, as opposed to a young guy who you're not sure what you're going to get, that's where the advantage lies with Nat Fyfe right now.
Hard body to inject it into the game when there's a lot of fatigue, so I like that. The bye. It's a bit of a mess, isn't it?
It's a total mess. We've had 5 weeks of it. It's too long.
Just teams here, there, and everywhere limping to it, and exacerbated by the early round stuff with opening round and teams, having 2 fewer games and other teams by round 4 and 5. It's just all over the place.
Yeah, so I think Tom McCarthy has taught us something, and so the Essendon guys who have come in Archie May and Lockie Blakiston, they're playing straight away as mid-season draft picks, but we don't know them. I think there's an opportunity for the AFL to have 2 weeks of buys rather than 5 weeks, and over those weeks...
So we should have some theme music or something. So this is a funky cod idea?
It's a funky cod idea.
Okay,
Funky Cole Medina.
Yeah.
I think we can have 2 weeks of buys, and then you still have plenty of football, because in replacement of those games that we're missing already, you add an all-star game for State League footy, where the guys who the AFL clubs have said they are interested in all play. And then we've seen Tom McCarthy, and we've seen May, and we've seen Blakiston playing on TV, on a big stage, on free-to-air TV on a Friday night, as an example. And we know these are the guys who are the 44 out there. There were
so who are they playing
picked.
against?
They're playing against each other. It's an all-star.
Okay.
It's all-star match. So you're just trying to get the 44 best State League players out there, and then all week we're hearing this guy's been picked to play in this position because he's a chance to get selected by Essendon and they need a ruckman. This guy's playing for Tom McCarthy's playing for West Coast. He's already expected to be going to West Coast. He's playing across half-back for the yellow team, or whatever you put them in as. You can work out how you call the teams. It could be named after a player or something like that, line up against the wall, however you want it to be. But you play them in one game that week. So suddenly you've got 4 AFL games plus this All-Star game. The Under-18 National Championships are on at the same time. Play them as well on free-to-air TV.
Or you play against the All-Australian State 18s team. A little bit later.
Yeah, I think it has to be before the mid-season draft, though, so people can see. I think we don't sell the message well enough of who the draftees are. We all knew who Harley Reid was, but we don't see enough of the next generation. So get those under-18 guys on free-to-air TV throughout the bye rounds over those 2 weeks. Get the 1 week of an all-star game for the potential mid-season draftees, and we start to learn more about them that way. And then we have enough footy to keep ourselves happy watching TV, and we have enough AFL footy that it doesn't last over 5 weeks for all these buys. And then we learn stuff and we see stuff. And I think it's a win-win.
Now, just when we were calling the big forward, the big haul forward, we were regretting the death of it.
The key
All of
position
a
players,
sudden,
yep.
Here we go. We've had a 7-goal haul from Mitch Georgiades, well done to him. 6 goals from Hogan, 6 goals from Jeremy Cameron. A really good 5-goal haul from Aaron Cadman, probably the breakout game of his career, and also Logan Morris stepped up there too. And there are other. It was a wonderful game if you're missing the big genuine forward.
There's nothing like the buzz of someone turning to you and going, "Oh, have you heard someone has kicked 5?" And it's halfway through the third. You'll turn on and watch that. And that's what the game misses, isn't it? When it was Plugger and Dunstall and Matty Lloyd and all these guys over the years who were kicking big bags, you're sitting back going, I wonder how many they'll get.
Well, Dunstall and Lockett used to, after each game in the rooms, they would ask someone, how many did he kick?
Yeah.
Because they wanted to know, because it was a bit of a race.
Yeah, and Josh Kennedy used to be amazing at kicking bags goals as well for the Eagles. And Pav did it at times. We need the game to get back to that, and Buddy Franklin, they are the rock stars of the game. When the key forward is clunking them and kicking goals, everyone sits back and goes, got to watch this. You can't turn it off. How many will he get? And that's what the game had taken away from it over recent years because of the we'll defend, it's too easy to put blokes back and all that sort of stuff. Anytime you can get someone kicking a bag, it's great for footy.
I mentioned Logan Morris. Brisbane, are you concerned about their form at the moment? And I pull out one stat here. I'm not writing them off yet, by the way. I think they're too talented a squad to do that. But I am concerned. 28 tackles in a game of football, 9 players who did not lay one. That concerns me about intent.
Yeah, that shows that they're not what they were at the start of the year. It's a long year. I'm prepared to give a team like that who are coming off a flag a couple of weeks grace where you go, well, maybe they're just a bit bored. You know, maybe they're getting to June, July.
It happens. Middle of winter here.
Well, you know, there's not as many people at the game. You know, we're not playing for anything other than 4 points at the moment. Come August, when you build in towards September, it all changes. I think it's hard to be up for a long, long time. They've been up for so long. If they drop out of the top 4, then there'll be some concerns. But if a Brisbane team that finishes anywhere in that top 4 and has a double chance, you do not want to play them in September because they can win the flag from anywhere.
So a team that I picked to win the flag pre-season, and about 3-4 weeks ago, I had my tail between my legs thinking like I got that wrong. But I'm starting to think maybe, just maybe, they might mount a bit of a challenge, is GWS. And we saw they've managed to win. The problem with them is they're inscrutable. It's a great word. They're impossible to read. You expect they'll go and win at the Gabba. They'll go and win these games they shouldn't. They'll win at beat Geelong at GMHBA, but then they just inexplicably drop games. So hard to get a read on them, but I do like Finn Callahan in that side. He is a bit of a barometer for them, and I just like the direction they're heading at the moment, keeping in mind there's no Toby Green. Brent Daniels, who hasn't been playing much footy, was injured again at the weekend, but he hasn't had any impact. So I think there's a lot of upside for this side, and I think they're one to watch in the second half.
Yeah, if they get their best team out there, then they can beat absolutely anyone. I think
with the forward line we've got.
Yeah, their depth drops away pretty quickly when you look at all the players they've lost in recent years. Yeah. And they've got a lot of young kids in there then. So if they don't have their best group out there, then I don't think they can win it. Because we know what happens with new players and teams. They become inconsistent. And that's why you're able to win games that no one gives you a chance in, and then just suddenly drop one and everyone goes, what happened there? Like, they were horrible against Fremantle, as good as the Dockers were, but they were terrible that day. So you can't have gaps like that between your best and worst. So that's why I'm not as confident in GWS.
Okay, conversely, Geelong. So play Brisbane this week, and then they've got a pretty soft draw. So you can look at it 2 ways. I look at it this way. I think Geelong finishes clear on top of the ladder with a little bit of distance, probably to Collingwood or Brisbane or whoever. But do you want a soft draw leading into finals? Because it is a pretty soft draw if you have a look at what Geelong's facing this second half of the season. So for me, I'm fascinated in how that's going to play out.
Number one thing for Geelong is health, I reckon, towards the end of the year.
So they'll rest players.
Yeah.
Jeremy Cameron, Patrick Dangerfield, they'll all be rested.
Tom Stewart will probably have a rest as well because he's had some injury worries. Yep. Mitch Duncan they can look after him.
They'll probably, and even though they're a bit younger, Max Holmes, Bailey Smith, who was rested a couple of weeks ago, they'll probably get a bit of a rest at some stage too.
And Chris Scott is an amazing coach.
He is.
And the way he sets that team up, he will just have them purring when it matters later on in the year, and he can get them through because he'll just coach them to victory with the way that he sets games up. They are incredibly dangerous, and they could easily, as you say, just keep on going, finish on top and win the flag, because that's what Chris Scott does every year. Gets them into a preliminary final, gives them the chance to win it, and then the players just have to perform.
So is there a conspiracy theorist in you, Cot?
Oh, it depends on what the conspiracy theory is. I do believe we went to the moon, even though a lot of people don't. But,
I believe we went there.
Yeah.
Hawthorn v Adelaide, why was it fixtured in winter on a Friday night?
Oh, conspiracy theory, the hell out of you with that. That's no worries. That was a message to Tasmania. Come and sit in 3 degrees without a roof.
100%. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely I do.
In fact, that was only the second night game, I think, there.
It just looked horrible. Like when you turn the TV on and the commentators down on the ground before the game have got scarves on and you can see their breath, you're like, why would anyone want to sit in that?
Did you watch the game?
Yeah.
Oh, that was hard work.
It was hard work to watch.
Oh, it was a hard work when you're a Hawthorn supporter. I'll give you the tip.
Yeah, no, that sent a clear message to everyone that footy isn't great in Tasmania at night time in winter. And there's a shock.
So we're going to
build a stadium, put a roof on it, and I reckon that everyone who went there would have enjoyed it a lot more, and so would we watching it at home.
Western Bulldogs, what do you make of them?
They do a lot of funky stuff. Luke Beveridge mucks around with them a bit too much, I still think. So he had them going great guns at the start of the year. Players have moved around a fair bit. There's been little experiments here and there for what if later on the year, and suddenly they're outside the 8. So I think the best
How are they
teams,
outside the 8?
They've dropped games they shouldn't have dropped. We forget about games they lose when they look amazing when they win.
Well, 72-point win over St Kilda, pretty ordinary the week before against Hawthorn.
Yeah. So they're able to play really, really well. They dominated the Bombers earlier in the year as well. When they make mistakes at selection or just try something here or there and then it falls away, that's the problem. So they need to be consistent enough during the season with the way they select teams and the way they play that they can finish in the top 4, because they always miss out on a top 4 position by 1 or 2 games and then it becomes too hard for them in September.
The 3 points I'd make, one is they managed to win by 72 points with Bontempelli well tagged by Windhager. Yep. The second point I make is how amazing is Sam Darcy. Just steps back off a break and just dominates that
freak
game.
Of nature.
Absolute
freak of nature.
So I think there's a few opposition teams probably thinking like, there's not many players who can play on him in the comp.
I don't think there's any that can genuinely match him with his arms so up in the air. So you've got to just try. They chopped the arms a few times and didn't get the free kick. I reckon you've got to just take the punt. The umpire will miss some every now and then because he's going to mark it. If you just try to spoil it legally,
you can't just stand there and do nothing. Yeah.
Correct.
And the third point I make, do you expect Jamari Ugle-Hagan to play football again for the Western Bulldogs at an AFL level?
This season or ever?
Ever.
No. To both.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll be there. I'd be horrified if they played him this year, given he hasn't been there for the whole season.
So he needs at least. So he's back at training this week. Needs at least 4 or 5 weeks probably, and then he can play some VFL, possibly. But I don't know if the trust is there with the teammates.
Yeah, well, there's always the fact that talent always overrides everything when it comes to coaches, and they'll keep players regardless of what they do, just because they know they're a good player. But I think when you disappear for the majority of the season, you've let a lot of people down. Is it going to happen again would be my question if I was the coach. So I'd be moving him on and getting the best value that you can and live with the consequences if he becomes a superstar.
Fair enough. Cod, favourite time of the week, the Thirsty Camel mailbag. This week's special Emu Export cans. Camel Club member price, it was hard to get that out, is $59.99 a block. Join up in store or online today. As always, we'll be giving away a $50 digital voucher thanks to Thirsty Camel. Get your questions in to TheWestSport at wanews.com.au. Please include your mobile number at the bottom of your email as we will send you a digital voucher if you are a weekly winner. Cod, copped a bit of a pasting in a couple of these. And
well,
one
that's
of them,
good. You're a Hawthorn man, so I like to see you cop a pasting
for good reason.
Sometimes.
This is from Wayne Quarters. What a disappointment it was to hear you refer to East Perth as Old East.
You didn't.
I did
You
too.
did?
I did.
Oh, that's bad.
I'm going to call it a brain fart, one of the great brain farts, because, mate, I'm an East Fremantle supporter. As he points out, they were never known as Old East, though they were once known as Union Football Club. There is, however, another waffle club that was once known as Old East up until 1982. I am, of course, referring to the mighty East Fremantle Sharks, a team that you purport to support. Lift, son, lift. Wayne, I have noted your criticism. It was a terrible thing to say, and of course I know they're the Sharks and they were never older.
You have to sit in detention.
I do have to sit in detention.
Or in the naughty corner.
Hello, chaps. The AFL fixtures are a complete dog's breakfast with buys scattered all over the place, making the league ladder difficult to decipher. My 5-year-old grandson could do a better job. One of the main reasons is that farcical opening round. By all means, play a couple of blockbusters in the northern states in the first round, but make them part of a full round of fixtures. Then about halfway through the season, there should be 3 consecutive bye rounds involving 6 games and 6 teams with a bye each round. Teams coming off a bye should be drawn to play against each other the game after their byes, thus eliminating any advantage or disadvantage associated with coming off the bye. Finally, after 17 rounds, every team should have played every other team. Not rocket surgery, he says. Steve from Sereno. Well,
he makes a lot of sense with most things that he says there, doesn't he?
He does.
I mean, who would have thought you should play every team once before you play another team?
Exactly. Who would have thought? I do, however, totally agree with him on opening round. I have no problems opening the season in the northern states. Just roll it into a normal fixture and call it round 1.
Yeah, it hasn't worked. It hasn't. I can see why they've done it, but I think what we're seeing the longer this season is going is it impacts on the competition too much. So they need to fix that up, or else we're going to end up with a ladder like we've got at the moment where it's impossible to read and there's too much angst throughout clubs in general. So I think that's under amazing pressure to be retained into the future. So,
hi, gents. Love the podcast, but I'm intrigued to hear the excuses for Oscar Allen's performance from Quarters this week from Mike. It's a bit harsh, Mike, but you're entitled to your opinion. Well, look, he did play on Jacob Wiedering at the weekend. There's not too many players that escape unscathed from that.
Ball didn't get down there much earlier either,
No.
so it's pretty hard to be a forward when the ball isn't down there, as we said, 10 to 24 inside 50s in that first quarter. It didn't matter which forward you weren't going to see too much of it.
It's been building into some form. It was a tough game for him. Obviously, he was injured at the end, but
I'm more concerned about the way the midfield played in the first quarter rather than Oscar Allen.
So am I. Delivery
And the back
wasn't
line.
great, but there you go. Was that an excuse, or was that just stating it as it is?
I think that was stating as it is.
There you go. Now, this is a bit longer, so bear with me. This is from Garrett via the TheWestSport Instagram. This is actually in response to the clip of you, Cod, explaining the mid-season tournament idea for Tuesday's mailbag.
Yes.
One thing I've thought for many years would be great to see within footy is an Australian Cup type tournament like they have in soccer. I've grown up playing both sports and now work full-time in football, so seeing the effect the Australia Cup has not only on local teams but also at the top level. Every registered senior men's team in the country playing the Australia Cup tournament, from the bottom state leagues to the A-League, all in the same tournament, preliminary rounds within the states, and as the tournament progresses, the interstate travel begins to come into things. Been some great stories of state league clubs beating semi-pro teams to advance deeper into the knockout rounds. And in recent history, we had a semi-professional team from New South Wales, NPL, Sydney, Croatia, make the final against Macarthur in that year's tournament. 2 of the 4 semi-finalists were semi-professional, and he goes on. Look, we did have a competition many years ago. It was a night competition, and it was called the Sterling Cup. It was called the Escort Cup, and you'd have VFL teams. This is pre-AFL, playing against teams from the Waffle and the Sandful. So you'd have, generally speaking, it was a mid-season competition. Is my memory right there? Do you remember it?
I know it happened.
I
I've
remember
seen
watching
highlights of it, but I wasn't old enough to.
Well, I remember going to the footy. I remember going to watch Hawthorn play Claremont, and Claremont was actually going to win, but they turned the sprinklers on. And so that was the end of that game. I think I saw Swan Districts play, saw Gary Sidebottom play, saw a couple of Sandful teams. Norwood was one of them I saw play. Look, it was a great competition, but times have changed. Certainly, you're not going to get away with Waffle and Sandful now playing against AFL teams.
No.
And certainly not teams below that level.
No, and
Be unwatchable.
when the VFL and the Sandful and the Waffle were all as strong as they could be, it was competitive within those teams. But if you look at Essendon as an example at the moment against Geelong last week, even this week, Essendon will have 7 players who have played less than 10 games out there and 9 who have played less than 20. They will get flogged. You know, talk about gamble responsibly. I reckon the line is a little bit low at the moment. I reckon it'll be closer to 10 goals rather than 5 goals. West Coast had 6 single-figure guys and 7 under 20 against Carlton at Gather Round this year and lost by 71 points.
Yep.
So that's what a state league team would be against an AFL team. We saw when West Coast had COVID issues and were bringing in top-up players, they were losing those games as well. So there is no hope in hell of a state league team beating an AFL team. You could look at it and say, we want all state league teams playing each other again.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
probably
what
a better idea.
That was the Foxtel Cup a few years back.
If you take the AFL out of the equation, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, and the Foxtel Cup, which was a midweek tournament, was a great concept, but what clubs said was we care more about winning our own flag.
Yeah.
We're not going to put players out there on Saturday into Wednesday into Saturday because it'll cost us one of those games. So they had to put a predominantly reserves team out there midweek, and so it didn't work. So the only way that concept can work is if there is a break for all of the other competitions throughout the year so that you're putting your best players out there. And I'd love to see that on show.
Yeah. No, it was a good email nevertheless. Now, we will be back on Friday this week instead of Thursday because, of course, we have a Thursday night game opening the round. That is Fremantle versus Essendon at Optus Stadium. You have been listening to the West Sports Show. We have been brought to you by TabTouch. Got the touch? Download the TabTouch app today. What are you really gambling with? For free and confidential support, visit gamblinghelponline.org.au. Remember, you can watch or listen to this podcast on YouTube Music. Leave us a rating and a review, and don't forget to follow this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Cod, thanks very much for your time once again.
Always a pleasure, Quarters.